don't know, it's just not as exciting as the anime. Hello again, my lovely audience, it's Board Gamer, and this week we're talking about Curse of the Dead Gods. It's an action roguelike I picked up on the PlayStation on I want to say Tuesday or Wednesday, I don't remember the exact day, I wasn't sleeping very well. But yeah, it's the game I've been playing this week. I'm not usually into roguelikes, but I did get a little bit into this one, so it did something right. Maybe it might have sold me on the genre, probably not. I probably won't actively seek out another roguelike, but we'll see what happens. Let's get into it. As far as action roguelikes go, Curse of the Dead Gods is basically alright. You play as a nameless man who ventures into an underground temple, or dungeon thing, and has to fight his way through several corridors of challenge, only to build up corruption over time, which can inflict random curses upon you. And those curses stay with you until you either complete the run, or die trying. If you die, you lose any weapons or passive items you may have acquired that give you buffs and have to start again. Of course you do, that's how roguelites work, after all. And because of this structure, I personally have never been one for roguelites. Whilst you do get to keep your character upgrades that you've purchased, you lose basically everything else, which is a shame because your starting machete and pistol are shite. There is not much of a story on the surface. The game sees nameless McBumblefuck simply diving deeper and deeper into the dark without any clear motivation as to why he's doing it, which can both hurt and help the game. I don't mind telling you that I did enjoy some sessions with it, even sat down to play it to kill 20 minutes more than once without really thinking of it as a task done for the sake of a review. I was just sitting down to play a game, which is a positive note. That's what I mean by a lack of story can be positive. There's not much investment, so it's quite easy to just pick up and play. It does have some charms, like the dungeons don't seem to be procedurally generated, which allows you to become familiar with them and the variety of enemy types which infest them. And I do like the variety of enemy types, there's some quite good ones there. And there are some decent mechanics like using traps to kill the enemies or setting them on fire to turn them into a light source to make it easier to do combat, because that's something you've got to understand about combat. See, in the dungeons, you take twice as much damage in the dark, so light is essential, and you can't keep the torch on you at the same time you use your weapons. It does feel like a bit of an arbitrary mechanic. I'm thinking back to Doom 3, where you couldn't just tape a flashlight to your gun, but whatever. However, you can use your torch as a weapon because it's a flamey torch. Hooray! And you can batter enemies with it. And if you charge up a strong attack, you can hit multiple enemies at once, creating multiple sources of light. And the torch is also necessary for revealing traps, which you can lure enemies into. Traps like spike plates and flamethrower statues. It's actually quite fun to do that to enemies, and it can be quite useful because some of the passive buffs give you health if enemies are killed by traps. I do like that the runs don't take too long, at least not at first. 20 minutes at most in my playtime. When, however, you unlock deeper depths, you have to go through the original level, and now the next part as well, even fighting the same boss that you had to fight in the original level, which is a pain, though there is an upside to it. You do remove curses by beating bosses, where you can remove one curse every time you beat a boss, which is good because some of the curses are quite annoying to deal with, like the one that passively gains corruption over time. Some of them aren't so bad, like the one that doubles the radius of exploding barrels. That's quite useful. Couldn't really call it a curse. Apparently it is, because it's quite easy to avoid them, and either way it'll do more damage to the enemies than they'll do to you. There is a downside in the repetitiveness of it all, however. It's part of the reason I didn't like to do those longer dungeons. I'd rather just do the shorter 20-minute ones rather than the longer 40-minute ones. Because while it's all well and good to see the new enemies and get to the new bosses, it just takes too long, and you don't get to keep anything afterwards anyway, so why would you bother? There are also some minor balance issues. For example, whenever I could get my hands on a bow, I would get my hands on a bow, because it can hit from a distance, and if you time the shot right, it can hit multiple targets, and usually inflicting some sort of status upon them, like weakening them, or poisoning them, or setting them on fire. Yeah, I know it was cheap to use it, but it made the game easier, and it was still somewhat enjoyable despite everything. And when I say time it right, I mean every weapon has a brief second. For most melee weapons, it's during a heavy attack, or for a ranged weapon, it's usually just a brief moment during their standard attack, where you will do the most damage when you time it right. You'll see a little graphic appear on screen, it will turn yellow for a second, and that's when you fire. Do it then, and you execute a perfect attack. Perfect attacks are obviously more dangerous. They can even restore some stamina to you if you have the right weapon equipped. And I always personally found the bow the easiest to pull this sort of thing off with. I wasn't keen on most of the melee weapons in this game, and found that keeping enemies at a distance was much better. While you could parry them and then do a lot of damage to their weakened frame, I've never been that good at parrying in faster paced games, so I found a solution that worked for me, even if it did trivialise things to an extent. And one of the problems with the enemies is most of them don't have ranged attacks. attacks. There are a few of them that do, but they're in a vast minority to the ones that favour melee attacks. And so when you have a bow, it's quite easy to just defeat all of them and not really worry about it. Not that it's particularly hard to defeat a lot of them in melee anyway, because there's this big glowing graphic that appears when they're about to do an attack, which makes it easy to dodge or parry or block or just move away from or whatever you're going to do. And it's only really a threat if, unlike me, you don't suck at timing, which I do. I suck at timing, so it did a lot of damage to me, but anyone else would probably be better at it. Do I like this game? I'm not really sure. It has its strengths and I casually sat down to play it a couple of times. I'm sure I will even sit down and play it after I'm done with this review. But all of that sort of thing could be said about Overwatch, for example. I wouldn't exactly say I like Overwatch. It's in that same boat of a viable time sink. It's not a game that I want. It's just a game that I have and will occasionally play. I don't hate or love the game. It has its moments, has some charm, and for a top-down isometric game I found its controls were pretty spot on, as in aiming and moving. I did have to rebind the dodge and torch controls, but that was easy enough to do, and you can rebind quite a lot of the controls, so the game doesn't lose any points there. I would suggest some changes, like healing items being available, or being able to keep at least one of the weapons you find, or maybe just have it so that if you win a dungeon, if you succeed in an exploration, you don't lose all your shit, and you can carry it on to the next one. That would make me feel like I'm working towards something, and it would make death more impactful, because there's not much of a victory to overcoming the dungeons. You do get some items, but nothing amazing. It is easier to build your character up more if you succeed, but it's not impossible to do so otherwise. The phrase, "it could be better or it could be worse," is a lazy and tired one, but Curse of the Dead Gods cannot really be described as anything else, at least not as far as I'm concerned. It's a competent enough title, it's reasonably priced. I picked it up for, I say, approximately £15, and I didn't walk away from a session in a bad mood. Which, obviously, that's a plus. It's not an amazing game that will light the world on fire or anything, but I'm not left disappointed or bitter. But then again, I didn't really have any expectations to begin with, so make of that what you will. This sword has a notable bend in it. Why is it not good quality? I paid 30 quid for it from Amazon. Shows what I know. Well, thanks for watching this week's review. What did I just hit? I hit something. I'm sure it was fine. Thanks for watching this week's review. You know the deal. If you like what you see in here, like, share and subscribe. You know, you find me on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. If you want to support me, I'm on Patreon. We have some cool merch for... Why am I saying we? It's me. I have some cool merch for you. If you're one of the bigger contributors, I'd really appreciate it. Be sure to check in on Wednesday. I continue the board plays of Dark Souls 3. We go through the Smouldering Lake. We go through Iroquois and the Boreal Valley. So that's good. That's fun. I've also started a Little Nightmares 2 playthrough. Should have the first couple of areas on that one as well. And Bioshock Infinite. That one might not get as far because of these 3 games, it's the one I'm the least keen on. Not saying it's a bad game. Bioshock Infinite is fantastic. If you haven't played it, you should play it. It's brilliant. Not the best Bioshock game, but a pretty good game nonetheless. Might have done better if it wasn't called Bioshock, but that's just me. I'm biased against it in that one area. Can't count with fingers. So anyway, see you next time. Board Gamer signing off.